Give folks a couple minutes to come in from the waiting room. All right, thank you all so much for joining. I'm going to go ahead and get started in the interest of time, and we'll just keep an eye on the waiting room for more folks to join. Thank you all so much for being here for the first in our three-part series on our deep dive on our bill platform for this legislative session. We're going to start today talking about our workforce bills, and then we'll have two more upcoming, one on our bills around health equity and one around community inclusion and empowerment. So really hope that folks are able to join for the other two parts of this series. I think I've met most of you, but for those I haven't met, my name is Nora Bent, and I'm the Director of Government Affairs here at the ARC of Massachusetts. And really excited to be here with all of you today, talking about our bills in a little bit of a deeper dive. As I said, this is going to be a three-part series. We've done previous webinars earlier this session on our priority setting process and our platform as a whole, but given that we're in the part of the legislative session where things are moving and hearings are happening, we wanted to provide a bit more of an opportunity to go in more detail on these bills and get you all involved in the advocacy on the bills that really stand out to you. So again, today we'll be focusing on the bills around the workforce. And I'm going to start off with just a quick refresher on our priority setting process, just to kind of give some detail on how we got here. And then a little snapshot on where we are in the legislative process today and how things will start moving forward. Then I'll talk about this category, uplifting the workforce and the bills that are in this category. And then I'll give you a bunch of resources and talk about advocacy to get more involved. And then, of course, have lots of time at the end for questions. As I'm going through, feel free to raise your hand or yell out if you need clarification or if I say anything crazy in these slides and you want me to go in a little bit more depth. But any other questions, feel free to throw in the chat and then we'll take them all together at the end. And we will be sending out the slides and resources after today's webinar, so you'll get all the links and good information to go from there. Okay. So again, I'm going to start off with just a quick refresher on our priority setting process, which we did this past fall. As I think folks probably know, Massachusetts operates on 2-year legislative cycles, and we just ended one in December and began a new one in January. So we took the fall and early winter to do some strategic planning and think about our agenda from previous sessions and what issues were really top of mind for folks in this moment. And that process was really robust and inclusive of our entire community. We did a survey where we had about 600 people respond and tell us what issues were really important for them, what bills they cared about. And we took all of that information along with the priorities of the ARC chapters, their staff and the families and individuals that get services through one of our 17 chapters, and kind of balance that with the state and national landscape. Obviously, the national landscape has changed quite a bit from the fall. We actually began this process pre-election, and then I think we held some sort of an emergency reset meeting in mid-November to address how the federal landscape was going to change. But taking all of the community input and balancing it with, the state landscape, what are the fiscal pressures, what moves in the legislature, what's the typical process like, and then of course the national landscape. How will any federal funding cuts or cuts to Medicaid impact the bills we're working on? We need to shore up and protect services. So all of those pieces really factor into that initial priority setting. And you can see the photo on your screen here is our attempt to put things into buckets and visually work on our priority agenda. So if you have done one of our recent advocacy trainings, the slide is going to look familiar. I'm not going to go through it in a lot of detail today, but I just want to show visually where we are in the legislative session. We're kind of at the beginning. At this point, bills have been filed. There are about 7,000, 8,000 bills filed in total, and about 14 of those are our priority bills. They've been assigned to a committee based on subject matter to do that really deep dive into it. And as we speak, those committees are holding hearings and scheduling hearings on all of these bills. And those hearings are really the initial opportunity to get in front of the lawmakers who are the decision makers on these bills and make the case for why they're so important. And then we have many steps of the process that follow that. But I want to spend some time today talking about our bills in more depth, and let me know if there are ones that really stand out to you where you want to get more involved in the advocacy for this committee process. It is definitely not too late and actually really great time to be plugging into these bills. So happy to have those conversations after today. Okay. Any questions on anything so far before I jump into our bills? Okay. I know I'm moving kind of quickly. We have a lot to cover, and I want to make sure we have a lot of time for questions. So bear with me as we go through this information. So in all of the priority setting processes that I talked about earlier, the workforce issues were really the top priority that we heard from individuals, family members, and of course, providers in our community. This has always been a focus of the ARC, right? This is one of our kind of focuses from session to session, but the feedback we received about just the significance of low rates of pay, challenging benefits, lack of training for staff, all leading to recruitment and retention challenges for providers who then can't open their doors to as many folks as they want to serve, leaving thousands of people on wait lists for services. Those are people who are at home, isolated, regressing, not getting the support and services that they need to be successful. And this is really it's kind of a double challenge of working on the rates of pay and supporting the workforce on its own, but then also thinking about how those challenges trickle down to the folks that get services through these programs. So the bills you're going to see in this category really attempt to address both of those challenges. Again, I'm going to go through each bill individually, kind of a little bit of a deeper dive into them. I said to someone earlier today, we could probably do a full webinar on each bill. So I'm still not going to be able to kind of give you everything on each bill, but again, happy to do questions and connect offline if anyone is interested in the bills in a little bit more depth than we can do today. So starting off with kind of the leader here, obviously all of this starts with pay, recruitment, retention challenges, leading to these wait lists and programs not being able to be open to capacity. This first bill here, which for all of these bills, you'll be able to see the bill number and the title and the sponsors on the screen. And then again, we'll have resources later on about fact sheets and other information. But this bill really looks at Chapter 257, which is the state reserve that funds human service worker salaries. It's a really great and important foundation to this work, but like everything, needs to be kind of updated to meet evolving and changing needs and pressures on the sector. So this bill requires, and this is going to be a little bit of gobbledygook words, but that when these rates are set, they tie to the 75th percentile of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The Bureau of Labor Statistics is a federal, nonpartisan agency that collects wage and labor data and kind of sets these benchmarks to be responsive to what's really happening in real time in the labor market and the wage space. So by setting the wages to this benchmark over time, it will mean that wages increase and will be more tied to kind of real-time information and data. I know that's a lot, and this is probably the more complicated bill on this list. But I think the thing to really take away from this is that it's looking at increasing pay to get at some of these recruitment and retention challenges and allowing people to stay in jobs that they really like and want to make their career, but maybe just kind of can't make ends meet given the pay that they're being offered at the moment. Okay. Again, put questions in the chat as you have them, and we'll have time at the end to take them all. The next bill is around turning 22. And I see a couple of folks on here who I know are really interested in this bill and may have other thoughts they want to add. But I would imagine most folks here are familiar with this process of being in special education up until 22 and then transitioning into the adult service world, and often kind of falling off this cliff in that transition, not having enough time to plan and have all of the kind of measures in place, even if you're starting really early early. So this bill looks at that and it gives more time for individuals and families to plan alongside the Department of Developmental Services to prepare for that transition. The other piece of this bill that I think is really important is that it creates a commission to really take a step back and look at these issues, look at what the gaps are in the transition process, look at the ideas and opportunities out there to really improve it overall. The commission in the bill language, we lay out a few things that really need to be addressed very closely around communication between DDS, schools, families, and the individual to make sure that that communication is really strong and robust throughout the process. Looking at the kind of awareness of services and the service coordinator program and the 688 referral process, really trying to improve and shore up those supports. Addressing unique needs for children who are young adults who are transitioning out of the Department of Children and Families or foster care services who may have kind of a different challenges in this space. And then adding a provision kind of called stay put, where if someone needs a residential placement, but one isn't available when they need it, they can stay where they are in their special ed services, where they've likely been successful in getting what they need until an appropriate placement is available. So kind of bridging that gap, knowing that availability might, again, ties back to workforce. That's why this is in this category. If there is that gap, that people can stay where they are and continue their existing services until a placement is available. Okay. All right, next bill. This is one that has been filed before, so it may be familiar to folks, but this one is looking at family members as paid caregivers. Currently, Massachusetts state law limits who can receive reimbursements for providing personal care, PCA services, or AFC, adult family and foster care services. Right now, spouses and legal guardians cannot be reimbursed for providing care that they're probably already providing in a lot of cases. So this bill expands that and allows for all family members to be paid for providing those services. The language includes biological parents, adoptive parents, foster parents, step parents, legal guardians, kind of anyone you think about who is in this space and providing those services. I think for me, this is really an equity issue, thinking about maybe a single family home or a single parent home, and thinking about the workforce shortage of PCA and AFC providers, and really the growing need for this kind of individualized type of support. Again, thank you for bearing with me going through these super quickly. Nicky's Law expansion bill, again, this is one folks are probably familiar with. People may remember the abuse registry law, Nicky's Law, passed in 2020, creating protections for individuals by barring staff who have been found to have substantiated findings of registrable abuse. It's a lot of big words there, from working with this population in the future. This is a really critical piece of legislation, but it only covers individuals in programs that are funded by DDS. So this bill is expanding the protections of Nicky's Law to those who receive services through Mass Health Day habilitation programs. This is a really interesting bill to me because it is quite literally a one-line bill that says, and Mass Health. So it's a pretty simple piece of legislation. This one actually has two different bills that work on it, which you can see here on the screen. One has some additional language in it about kind of streamlining the process overall, which I won't go into a lot of depth on today, but both expand to Mass Health Day Hab programs. Last one I'm going to cover for right now is this bill around a loan repayment program. This one establishes a program for loan repayments for human service workers, really thinking about the recruitment and retention challenges. The average wage right now for a direct support professional is about $20 an hour. And if you couple that with student loans, it creates a really impossible situation for so many people who want to do this work but just can't quite pay their bills with what they're being offered. So this bill, which is actually led by the Providers Council, creates a program for loan reimbursements where you get kind of a different amount of reimbursement depending on your level of degree. And what really excites me about this bill is that it prioritizes individuals who are working in marginalized communities or can provide services in a language other than English, or are making less than the average wage. So it has a lot of really strong equity and intersectionality components that I think are so important to keep in mind when we think about supporting the workforce. And then the last piece I'm going to talk about, so those were our priority bills in this category. I think what, 5 of them that were really focused on around uplifting the workforce. But for each of our categories, workforce, health equity, and community inclusion, we also have a slate of endorsed bills, which are bills that maybe another organization is really taking the lead on in advocacy, but we want to support and be there to uplift when appropriate. And for this category, there's one bill in that category, and this is a bill that really looks at eliminating the disparity in pay between human service workers who are employed by the state and those employed by community-based providers. So on a whole, folks employed by the state tend to make more than those employed by community-based providers. And this bill is looking at over time, kind of equaling out that disparity. There was actually some language passed related to this last year to study what those numbers actually are. And I think that report is either just released or will be released soon. So we'll get some more of that data to really help kind of make the case of why this is so important. So I just ran through a bunch of very complicated bills very quickly, and I appreciate you all bearing with me on that. I do want to leave lots of time for questions, which is why we're moving fast. But before I shift to that, I just want to provide some more resources and kind of how to get involved with this work. So again, you'll get these slides afterwards with these links, but on our website, on our legislative platform page, you can find a really detailed fact sheet on each of these bills. And it goes into why is this a problem, what does the bill do, and what is the impact. We also have contact information for each bill, so you can reach out to us with questions or to get involved. And then we have some great links on our website where you can see in real time what's happening with the bills. Was the hearing scheduled? Is it moving? And then we also have plain language fact sheets that summarize all of these bills in 1 or 2 bullet points, really digestible for really any audience, or if you just need a quick 1-sentence overview of the bill. And then on the masslegislature.gov website, which is a really fantastic website for finding information, you can see the bill language in more detail, like explicitly what was filed. We link to that on our website, but you can also find it on malegislature.gov. Again, tracking information, although I think the links we have on our website are a little bit easier to understand. And then, of course, when the hearings are scheduled. So this is a great way to find out the hearing was scheduled, where it is, the logistics, all of that good stuff. And then, of course, our action alert, which the QR code is here on the screen, are really a great way to be involved in this. You sign up once, and then we let you know when something is moving, when we need advocacy on all of these bills. And that will be at different points in the process, depending on which bill and how it's moving. But it's a really great way to just be kind of engaged and sign up and get on that list. And then, of course, my email address, these are between all 3 categories, all 3 webinars, we're going to be talking about 14 bills. That's a lot. And no one needs to be working on all 14 except for me, which is my job. But there's going to be like 1 or 2 that really stand out to you. And that's great. Let me know what they are, and we'll connect you with the advocacy. If you really want to focus on the Nicky's Law expansion bill, that's really great for me to know so that when that hearing does get scheduled, or if we need to contact a legislator and have a meeting, I can call you and say, hey, we need you to come help out. Can you meet me on this date? So take some time today after this webinar or after all 3 parts in this series to kind of read through and think about what's really meaningful to you and your loved ones and your family. And then just another quick plug for the next 2 webinars. We have another one this month on the health equity bill. So about 4 bills in that category. and then one in early July about the community and inclusion bills. So after all three of these, we will have talked about all bills on our platform. Again, each bill could have its own webinar and we could spend all day talking about them, but I just wanted to provide a little bit more detail than we've been able to do so far, to really make folks feel kind of comfortable with these bills and think about where you want to focus your time this session. Happy to transition now to questions or discussion. I am going to stop screen sharing just so that I can see all of you. But there are some really fantastic folks on here who are already involved in some of these bills. So in addition to questions, if folks want to share any thoughts or what really stands out to them about the bills, that would be great. While folks are pondering questions, I'll take the two that are in the chat for right now. The first one I see is a really good question about the likelihood of the workforce pay or benefits bill passing this session. Yes, that is a great question. The budget implications to this are really important. We're towards the end of the state budget process right now, and we filed amendments, different amendments in both the House and Senate to see some progress on the wages, and unfortunately, neither was successful. This is going to be an ongoing priority. Some of the focus of filing this bill, of course, we want the bill to pass tomorrow. But in the meantime, is also just having the conversations with our partner organizations and legislators about why the workforce is so critical, explaining how the funding works, and kind of continuing to prioritize it over time. So I think, as folks know, bills can take a while to pass, and this is I think a first-time file for this bill, so it is going to be a continued talking point and continued priority. And then the other question, yes, the slides and recording will be shared after today's meeting, so don't feel a need to jot down every little detail. So yeah, any other questions? Feel free to just unmute yourself or ask in the chat. Yeah, I'll take two from the chat. I see one from Jackie. The state put provisions in the Turning 22 accountability legislation. And I see the wonderful Nina, who this was her suggestion on here. So Nina, if you want to jump in, feel free. But this is really thinking about in these moments of a gap where someone needs their residential services, but there's nothing appropriate available, maybe that kind of meets their needs or is in their geographic area, that they can stay where they are, where they've been successful, and continue to get those services while the next program or placement is found. Nina, I don't know if you want to share a little bit. I don't want to put you on the spot, but feel free if you want to.
No, it's exactly that. I mean, it's a provision that's available in K through 22, and that's taken away in adult services. And so even if you're doing great, it goes away, and you are placed you either sent home or, placed in somewhere that might not work for you. And so you lose control. And I think it's something that parents should have some control back in terms of not having their children who might be self-injurious or aggressive not be protected.
So
Yeah, and I see another. Oh yeah, Jackie, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to follow up. So would that mean they would get to stay in their the education setting that they are currently in after they turn 22 because there isn't an appropriate placement? Is that what you're referring to when you say stay put?
Yeah, that's correct. And I would have to just triple check the language. I think it's just for residential. But again, I would just have to triple check that. I see that question in the chat as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. I saw another hand raised, but I think it went down. Someone else have a question? Okay, I see another question in the chat about the family caregiver bill. We're waiting on a hearing date for that one. We're thinking maybe sometime in July, but we actually just 2 days ago heard about hearing dates for the Nicky's Law expansion bill and another one that's not in this category, which I'm blanking on. So it is definitely the time to be letting us know which ones really stand out to you, because just the point we are in, these hearings will start getting scheduled very fast and furious. So want to make sure we really have that list so that we can just reach out and say, hey, Nina, it's time, let's go testify, and kind of help you prep for that as much or as little as you need the support. other questions?
I had a question about the turning 22 bill. So if it had passed and a student needed to stay in their educational setting, would who would pick up the cost?
Oh yeah, I see that in the chat. Sorry, I missed that.
That's
Um, I think it would be through DDS. I think it's until the new placement is found. Again, I could just reread the language just to be sure, but that's my memory.
Okay.
I just add that I know my son got a waiver for an extended stay at his residential placement until he made it over into his what is a temporary placement right now, a temporary adult placement, and DDS did pick up that cost at his residential stay for it was only 7 weeks. But I know that's a negotiation that had to take place. And I assume that's something that's, beyond me, but that's what happened for him for 7 weeks at least.
Well, thank you. I see another question in the chat about the family caregiver bill. That last session, additional costs were an obstacle, which could be more of a concern given potential Medicaid cuts. Yes. I talked earlier about the impact of the national landscape on these bills, and I think that's really affecting our strategic conversations about how to move forward. In this interim where obviously we're fighting against cuts, but if cuts come, what's kind of a baby step we could take on the bill? Could we look into a commission to study it, or are there parts of it that would be less expensive that we could focus on? So I think, we've seen on a couple of different bills where getting something done is better than nothing, and we can take a little step here, a little step there, until we can get to that final moment of passing the bill as a whole. But that is definitely a factor in a lot of these bills. Particularly, I think something that's interesting in the community category, a lot of those bills cost not a lot. So there are some bills on this platform that would be pretty simple to get over the finish line and would, obviously make a huge difference for folks tomorrow. So also focusing on those bills that could be done quickly, have been around, have been vetted, and could move through the process.